In a year that's set to be crammed full of huge releases in the video world, we've been given the opportunity to review one of the standout video cameras from last year, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K features a Super 35 sensor and EF lens mount. The capability of that sensor and its processor are in truth what you're really buying into with this camera, as with any cinema camera, the body is really just the brains of a much larger camera rig. The Super 35 sensor enables this camera to capture an incredible 6K image using the Blackmagic RAW codec internally onto a UHS-2 SD or CF Express card. You can also record externally onto SSD drives for a more cost-effective, larger storage solution. And that's an important point, as the B-RAW codec at 6K is obviously going to be really data hungry, averaging at around 400 megabits per second. Now, beyond that huge frame size, you can of course go for a more lightweight middle ground by using the super versatile ProRes 422HQ codec, or in fact, any of the ProRes options that are available. However, this is only an option if you're willing to shoot in 4K or below, but it does offer you a really great balance between quality and workflow efficiency. The 13 stops of dynamic range and the dual native ISO system are incredible features to have here. All things considered, it actually makes this camera far more akin to fully formed video cameras such as the VariCam or the Canon C range than anything else in this miniaturized form factor. Now, the original BMPCC was known as the brains of a camera, the central point in which you'd have to build a camera rig around. Now, the 6K is a little more fully formed than that. For sure, it's not a run and gun affair like some of the high-end mirrorless cameras we're seeing on the market now, but it's definitely not as limited as the original version, sitting somewhere comfortably in the middle. That said, battery life is always going to be an issue on a camera that is processing this much data and with a screen this big. The body on its own takes the LPE6N batteries, which will probably give you around 45 minutes at best. So the addition of the dual battery grip is almost a mandatory accessory. The grip takes the NPF 570 battery from Sony, offering you a lot more usable running time. The whole host of connectivity options this camera has does suggest that Blackmagic both want it to be future-proofed and also have the potential of being the central point to a much bigger camera rig. There's the welcome addition of a mini XLR preamp alongside a 3.5mm mic pre and headphone jack, USB-C, 12-volt power, and a full-sized HDMI output all hint at the versatility of this miniature body and its long-term capabilities. The 5-inch 1080p LCD touchscreen on the rear of the camera is incredible in its own right. Bright and big, it does make the camera really easy to use with its lovely menu systems. However, some people will be disappointed at its lack of articulation. I can only assume that again, this hints at this camera being intended as a smaller part of a much bigger rig. Now, when it actually comes to using this camera, there's very little to be disappointed with. In fact, I'd say it's one of those rare breeds of camera tools that offer you so much joy that they actually kind of inspire you to do a little more. And really, that inspiration happens when you first get to see your footage, because it is incredible. The 6K B-RAW files are huge, data-hungry beasts, but it is totally worth it. The depth, colour and dynamics defy belief from a camera that only costs you around $2,000. When you step down a little to that ProRes 422HQ file in 4K, for me, is really where this camera comes into its own. Now, I know that this isn't using the bleeding edge of the technology available to me, but the balance between workflow and quality are always important, and for me, this is this camera's sweet spot. Of course, there's also the high frame rate options for you buttery smooth B-roll shooters, and shooting up to a maximum of 120 FPS in 1080, this camera doesn't disappoint here either. In short, it is just a joy to film with. I haven't struggled or stumbled with this camera at all, like you tend to do with a lot of new cameras. In fact, there was barely any learning curve at all. And like I said earlier, it's such a joy to use that it kind of just inspires you to do a little more with your filmmaking. Now, like any camera or piece of filmmaking gear I've used, there's always a compromise to be had, and unfortunately, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K isn't immune from that rule. Firstly, shooters stepping up from DSLRs or mirrorless cameras will notice the lack of continuous autofocus. This isn't abnormal for cinema cameras, as autofocus does tend to be more of a hindrance than a help, but it will take a little getting used to for these new adopters. Also, for me, I was surprised at the lack of internal ND filters, which are often a mainstay in video cameras of any sort. Obviously, you can just place a good variable ND on your lens, but it does feel like a feature that is missing from this camera. So truly, this is a camera that has defied my expectations, let alone its miniaturized form factor and price point. Of course, it is a very technical camera and some new users may struggle to get to grips with it. And for others, it may well require you to buy many additional accessories to fully rig this out. But in all honesty, the Pocket Cinema camera is a camera that will deliver such a good image that all of those little niggles are definitely worth it, and all of the owners will truly fall in love with this camera. For some more information, there's of course some links below, and whilst you're down there, why not consider subscribing to our channel? That's been my grab and go review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.